roster can even lean into that more and bring guys in. Then you go and you look at an offensive lineman and you say, how would you like to protect the best quarterback in college football? Go ahead and make yourself some money doing that.
100%.
Then you start to look at some of the other positions, edge rusher, and you say, how would you like to go one-on-one against one of the top tackles in college football every day at practice? You look at the cornerbacks and you say, how would you like to compete against some of the best wide receivers in college football? This is how you really start to build a program, and I think it starts with having a quarterback who instills that belief into the future that he is the guy.
What you're talking about is effectively momentum, right? And this is the first big domino that sets everything in motion. Really excited for Nebraska's future. Excited to follow his story as we go through spring ball.
And just to throw this out here, y'all stick around for later on in the show because Dylan Raiola did put out a poem on his Twitter account, and we're going to have to go through that, so you won't want to miss it.
We got you covered. Okay, another quarterback news came about this past weekend as Raiola was not the only quarterback to make headlines. UCLA's Dante Moore has announced he will be transferring to Oregon. This is an interesting situation because the Ducks already added Oklahoma's Dillon Gabriel in the transfer portal. So effectively, Moore is going to sit out for a year. As we know in the world of transfer portal, that is a little bit rare to see a guy go from a starter to a backup role. But Moore has been adamant about going to a place where he can develop as a quarterback, saying, and I quote, "For these next upcoming years, I just want to go to a place where I can get developed." That's the main thing, is really development. Making sure you're bettering yourself every day and having a staff around you that's going to develop you. Develop. He wants to be developed. So what do you think here as this applies to Oregon's situation as a whole, particularly their quarterback position with Dante Moore committed to the Ducks?
I mean, look at his stats from this past year. And I know he's a freshman, but it's not a super high passing total. And he was splitting time with Ethan Garbers out there for UCLA. He had 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and close to 50% completion, which is not a number you want. You'd like to be over 60 for your starting quarterback. And so I think he's making the right decision here when it comes to his future. What we have seen so far in Oregon under Dan Lanning is Bo Nix, who is a Heisman finalist, and you get a Dillon Gabriel, who is certainly a journeyman type of guy, but has been productive at every stop, UCF, then at Oklahoma, and I'm certain will be productive when he gets to Oregon. And now all of a sudden you've got the next quarterback in line, a guy who told you he is willing to learn and develop and to take the time to build his skill. So I think that they're in a really good spot. I think he's in a great spot personally because he can do all the things he said he wants to do. By the way, Nike money probably came through too, and I don't think that was something that we can oversell here. The NIL aspect certainly was there, but the idea now for Oregon that they can pitch to people, we have a quarterback of the future. Right? Like a lot of times we see you get the 1-year rental in, and I'm sure the recruits are asking, the guys on the roster trying to keep around are asking, who the hell is going to be spinning the rock next year? They got the answer right there.
That Oregon quarterback situation is good for years to come. Maybe the best in the Big Ten right now, which of course it is an arms race as we change. So I know you guys are probably football fans, right? You're not just watching, you're football fans in general. So maybe you caught the Seahawks-Eagles game last night, and Drew Lock leads his team down the field for a game-winning drive. I played with Drew Lock in Denver, and the word development is perfect for his situation. He was kind of thrust into the starting role. He certainly wasn't ready. I was critical of his play. But then he goes to Seattle, and he has a chance to kind of catch his breath a little bit. So we talk about Dante Moore that has starting experience, that is comfortable now being a backup. It's a chance to catch his breath. Learn the system, learn from Dillon Gabriel, and then you can hit the ground running. It may be easier to start your whole career and go to where there's a comfortable situation, but it's probably better long-term for Dante Moore to go learn from Dillon Gabriel to allow him to succeed down the stretch of his career.
And it's unique, man, because a lot of guys are missing that first part. They think that, hey, I'll just learn on the job. And I think specifically with the quarterback position, is you can kill a kid's career as easily as you can make it by putting him out there on the field too early. He doesn't have success, and all of a sudden he's questioning himself, questioning the coaching, questioning his teammates. And then you've got a guy who's looking around, asking too many damn questions instead of just playing the game of football. So I like this for him. I like this a lot for Oregon. But now this opens up a little bit of a different side, and it flips it over to another Big Ten school in Michigan, because a lot of people thought Dante Moore, a Michigan kid, might be in the running to go to Ann Arbor. And that quarterback situation certainly uncertain for next year. J.J. McCarthy has not made a decision, came out yesterday, as a matter of fact, and said he ain't thinking about this. He's fully focused on the CFP run. You got Jayden Davis, who's in the class of 2024. It's a recruit that they really like. They sent everybody out to visit him, essentially. They sent Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, Sharon Moore. They sent Jay Harbaugh. Everybody went out to visit him to make sure that he was going to be around. You see some of the other guys that are in this room right now. You've got Alex Orji, who's a guy who's gotten some playing time, but certainly they don't feel like he's the guy as of right now. Jayden Denegal is a guy whose name that pops up and people like, but certainly have not seen him out there in extended time. And it begs the question about the management of the quarterbacks, where I think this is a room specifically, very different than other rooms. You can bring in the top receiver, and as long as you can sell to the guys that you're going to be running 3 and 4 wide receiver sets and rotating, that they'll get their opportunities to catch the football. Same thing with tight ends. We run 1-2 tight ends. We get those guys in the game. We target them, running back by committee. You do it on the D-line with rotation. There's one quarterback that's in the game at a time. Do you think that there may have been some management of that room that goes into the decision of whether you want to recruit a quarterback out of the transfer portal or if you want to lay off on him?
Yeah, you have to manage the room, and you're dealing with egos, and the world of recruiting is just a unique place right now where you're telling a high school kid that you're the man and the world is your oyster, and then they get on campus and reality hits. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. Maybe you need to improve, maybe you're ready right now. So when I think about a management of the room, you might say, how do you balance all these egos and these personalities? You don't need to balance it if you're just honest from the jump. That will save you a lot of future headaches. You can look at some of these quarterbacks and say, listen, we think the world of you. You clearly have all the talent. We are going to invest resources into developing you, but we cannot guarantee you a starting role. We'll guarantee you the full chance to earn it and win that, but we cannot guarantee you the starting role. That may be uncomfortable for some quarterbacks, but the quarterbacks that get it, or players in general that get it, I actually think that benefits them long term.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I think anytime you say that you want to get a quarterback out of the portal, whether that's a guy that you want to bring in to compete for the starting job or a guy that you want to bring in to be a depth piece, there's probably somebody in that room who gets pissed off, right? It might be a high school recruit that gets pissed off by that situation where, why are you bringing this guy in? I thought I was going to be the next guy up. Why do we need more depth in the room? I thought I was going to be the depth at least to start. And so I think coaches are thinking about that. The other thing that we don't necessarily talk about that we should when it comes to these particular situations, we heard Matt Rule go out there and say how much it costs to bring in a starting level quarterback. Well, if you're going to bring that guy in, you're either guaranteeing him the job and saying that's it, and then you're saying screw the rest of the room, we'll figure that out from there. Or you're saying that you're willing to pay $1 million to a guy just to compete who might not win the job, then your second string quarterback, that a guy who was a second string who becomes a starter, is making half of that, maybe less, and now he's looking at, why is my backup making twice what I'm making? These are all of the issues that go into the recruitment of quarterbacks as of right now.
What you're talking about is politics, and it's the same thing in the NFL, where if you draft a guy in the first round, he may not be the best player, but you committed resources, which means he's the first one to get the chance, he's the second one to get the chance, he has a much longer leash because the amount of resources you invested. It's the same thing here. You know what? You guys have been loving my sweaters in the chat, by the way. Some of them are liking them, some of them saying it's a bold choice. We appreciate your feedback. Keep the chat active, but on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about practice. Are we talking about practice? Yes, we're talking about practice. Still to come on Red Corner, Blue Corner, has Jim Harbaugh learned from his past mistakes? Yes, we said it. We're talking about practice. And how are the Wolverines changing up their routine ahead of their Rose Bowl matchup with the Crimson Tide? recently the shopping in the transfer portal has picked up. QBs are starting to come off the shelf. In JP, Ohio State still hasn't done their Christmas shopping yet. What's going on down there in Columbus?
Well, first off, I'd like to point out there's a lot of quarterbacks coming to what is either Big Ten country or the North based off of this graphic. So very interesting once you start to look at it. I think in Columbus, they've kind of made a decision there about what they want to do at quarterback. I think the lack of pursuit, the lack of making a move is communicating to us what they believe they have in their quarterback room, whether that is Devin Brown, who will be starting in the Cotton Bowl, or whether that's Lincoln Keenholz, who's a true freshman this year.
Yes.
They must like their guys, and we'll see what happens from here.
I'm building out my Christmas list, and I have an Xbox already. I'm not asking for an Xbox because I already have an Xbox. What I'm telling you is I feel good about my current system. I think what Ohio State is telling you right now, I'm sure they liked guys in the portal. I'm sure they thought guys would be good quarterbacks. But for the right price, that's the key. And what they're telling you is exactly what you just said, JP. They feel good about the development of their quarterback room. I'll tell you what, that Ohio State system is known to develop quarterbacks really well as well.
So I'll ask you this question for a guy who has played, offensive football at the highest level. Is what type of development can actually go on for a quarterback through the course of a season?
That strides can get made, but it depends on what you do as a quarterback. If you just go through the motions and you say, I have 15 reps today, I'm going to do my 15 reps. I don't know that you see significant improvement. But I think the guys that improve significantly throughout the season, as a backup quarterback, so Devin Brown this year, what you get the play call in your earpiece and you see what Kyle McCord's looking at under center. Every time that play call comes in, you're getting a mental rep. What would I have done in this situation? And then you're saying, did I have the right thought or the wrong thought? I'm going to improve. Those mental reps are so valuable in terms of development throughout the season. You could make significant strides just by sitting on the bench and observing. And I think that's probably what happened at this point, because Devin Brown has all the physical talent in the world. What Ohio State and Ryan Day and what the guys on that roster are communicating, they like where Devin Brown is at this season. Certainly Kyle McCord did some great things, but he also left some things to be desired on film. The goal for Devin Brown is to build on what he did well and correct the things he didn't.
Yeah, it's just this idea in the back of my mind, and I'll preface it by saying Ryan Day has to be right on this for multiple reasons. Number one, Kyle McCord's gone. And if Kyle McCord is playing well and whoever's starting that quarterback for Ohio State is not playing well, that's going to be an indictment on Ryan Day. And the second thing is, you've heard about Ryan Day as this quarterback whisperer and this quarterback recruiter, but now if you miss on a couple guys in a row, people are going to call that into question, which I think would be a fair question to ask of Ryan Day. But the idea of how close this competition allegedly was coming out of training camp, and the fact that you have a Devin Brown character who's a year younger, and people have always talked about how he's got more upside, got big arm, he can, he can correct mistakes of other people because of the way that he moves around. He's got this competitive fire. It seems to me that Ryan Day might have made a bet on the fact that this guy was going to accelerate that development throughout this offseason. He's just got to be right on it.
You bring up a great point, and you talk about the true reality that through spring ball, through fall camp, through week 1, week 2, week 3, this was a very close competition. And let me present you the possibility that this competition had to, once McCord beat Notre Dame, you can't go back now.
It was done at that point.
He is the quarterback. That's not taking into the account Devin Brown still could have continued on his trajectory. As we work through this, I think that's probably what happened. I think maybe Devin Brown kept that competition close even throughout the season. Maybe at times eclipsed him in practice. And what Ryan Day is saying is, let's ride with 33.
He's just got to be right about it. I think that's the biggest part about it, is whatever decision Ryan Day has made and whatever he sees, he's got to be right about. But we do have some viewer comments that we would like to get to here. Matt Goldman says, need to hear Joshua's thoughts on OSU's transfer portal recruiting NIL struggles. All right, let me break it down here. I think the transfer portal, they have intentionally not pursued certain guys. And I think that they have to be very calculated, because when you've lost 16 guys or whatever the number is to the portal, you either have to bring in a big recruiting class or you have to fill through the transfer portal. I do think that there is a belief that there are guys on that roster who have waited and guys who have developed that they're comfortable rolling with. The NIL struggles, I think, are real and also overblown at the same time, from the standpoint of, I think that they've had dollars earmarked for certain people that they wanted. I think they have dollars earmarked for players currently on that roster too. And if you look around and read the tea leaves, there are plenty of guys who have not made a decision about what they're going to do after the season that are playing in the bowl game that would have opted out in many other situations. So I'm not predicting what's going to happen there. I do think it's intriguing because I know that they have been approached about different packages there. And the fact of the matter is, for NIL as a whole, I think it's an unsustainable model, and I think a lot of kids are not going to get paid the money that they were promised. And I'm looking at some of the desperate schools down south that are throwing out ridiculous numbers. I'm not exactly sure all of that money's there right now, and I'm not sure it's going to be there in the future.
Miami comes to mind, right?
That's who I'm talking about.
So Ohio State is sitting here with the number 2 class in college football, the recruiting class. They're recruiting well. They have a chance. We'll see how the next 24, 48 hours, next few months play out. They have a chance to have the number 1 class. They're recruiting well. This is a zero-sum game. I mean, I'd love to have infinite money like it's a video game and pay all the 5 stars to go to my school. But if it means I have to sacrifice a couple $1,000,000 for an unproven high school recruit to get him on my class so I have that doesn't make sense. What about keeping your guys here? I'd rather have Travion Henderson back for a year.
Right.
If it comes out of that NIL pool, I'd rather have Travion Henderson back than an unproven defensive end that's now committed to Miami. Maybe he's good. Maybe these guys are great. That's fine. I'll take the known thing and get Henderson back.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing thing, too, about how much you'd like to give to a guy, too, coming out, right? And you're fully taking a risk on what he may be.
I'll take Jack Sawyer. I'll pay Jack Sawyer to stay back.
It's an interesting approach. I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do with the NIL, but it seems like in Columbus, at least, the recruiting rankings are doing all right there. We're going to take one final break on Red Corner, Blue Corner here, but still to come, we got to visit with our guys from rivals down south and get their thoughts on losing a top QB to the Big Ten. Plus, can the Michigan receivers win one-on-one battles against Alabama secondary? We'll talk about all that coming up. We are back on Red Corner, Blue Corner. Jake Butt, I'm Joshua Perry, and we're joined by our guys from Rivals down south. We got T-Bob, A-Bear, and SEC Mike in the house. Fellas, how we feeling today?
Feeling great, boys. Thank you for having us. Christmas is in the air. You can feel it, can't you? Absolutely wonderful.
T-Bob.
Yeah, doing great.
After your performance in the Nutcracker last week, you've basically become our Renaissance man. So we want to get your opinion of the poem that sealed Dylan Raiola's commitment to Nebraska. We'll pull it up right here. I'll just read you the opening 2 lines and the last 2 lines. So how about this? In the realm of college dreams where purpose takes flight, enter Dylan Raiola, crafting his narrative in the night. And how about this for a conclusion? I won't read you the whole thing. In a weekend's decision, destiny calls to fulfill his purpose, where a new dynasty enthralls. T-Bob, we need you.
I actually did a dramatic reading of this on my morning show. So you are right in line in calling me in on this one. Let's be clear. The quality of the poem is not very good.
I agree.
It's a dog crap poem.
It is.
Like qualitative. It's really bad.
It's poor.
It's poorly structured. It's not very rhythmic. Like the thing you could say about it is that it rhymes, right? That said, a lot of people are clowning the very act of posting the poem. Which, to be clear, I don't think Dylan Raiola wrote. Maybe AI did, maybe they did, whatever. A lot of people are clowning the act of posting the poem. This shows a fundamental misunderstanding of Dylan Raiola's social media. Go look at this man's Twitter. Every single post is a picture of him playing football with a Bible verse on it, different Bible verses. This is a warrior monk that we are dealing with here. This is obviously somebody who draws power and inspiration from the written word. And yes, you can tell me that he's just chasing the bag in Nebraska because you're an upset Georgia fan, or you could tell me he's afraid of competition because this came out after whatever. What I see, I'm just taking it all at face value because this kid constantly motivates himself, like I said, with the written word. So as bad as the quality of the poem is, the tone, the message rings very true. He's even using the exact same verbiage that we did. Why go be a cog in the machine when you can go write your own legend?
I'd like to jump in real quick here. First off, anybody using entwined and enthralls, we're done. We're not going to, no. But this man mentioned himself as a hero, and the other 3 names in there won Heisman trophies. We are not making any excuses for what this man posted on, whoever posted it, on his social media. It is crazy behavior to do that. And like you're setting yourself up for failure because the first time he goes out there and has a terrible game, people are going to screenshot that stanza of this little poem and be like, I thought you were a Heisman winner. I thought it was a trophy coming with you.
Well, Joshua, you can appreciate this. And now we begin Rivals Down South here on Stadium. Got everybody hanging out in the chat. But you can appreciate this. Only cowards talk trash after the fact, okay? The only people I want on my team in my corner are those who are willing to put their nuts on the table. And make no mistake, that's exactly what Dylan Raiola did with this post. He is putting himself out there. It's a vulnerable place to be because, as you said, 1 3 and out, and they might be ready to turn on him. But guess what? That's okay because some people, when you apply that pressure to yourself, that's when you operate at your best. You get outside of your comfort zone. You add the extra additional eyeballs and everybody making fun of you, and you internalize it and you use it as motivation. I think this is great for college football. Instead of just going and helping out the empire that is Georgia football and what they're going to continue to be, he is trying to resuscitate one of the great brands of the past, add another contender potentially to the mix, and he sacrificed a lot to do so. Championships. He'll never win one at Nebraska. He will win one. He would have, most likely, at Georgia. And we're about to figure out who's going to win a championship here this year, which I thought would have been Georgia. But what did you know? Alabama. The song remains the same. And, boys, I know we started to get into this yesterday a bit, but I want to pick your brain again. And, Joshua, we can start with you. When you look at matchups, right, that's what football is decided by a lot of times. And the question that's on a lot of people's minds is, okay, when I look at the 2 teams, how in the world are Michigan's wide receivers going to find success against this Alabama secondary, especially when Michigan's offense has been sputtering and sputtered against every top 40 defense that they face this year?
Yeah, it's a great question that you ask. And first off, I know people have pointed to J.J. McCarthy's numbers over the last 5 games of the season when, last 4 games didn't throw for more than 150 yards or whatever the case is. You also look at the characters up on the screen right there, and I think this is a part of it, is that Roman Wilson, I think, is a very talented wide receiver. He's got some really rare speed. But the rest of the group, I feel like, is a group who still needs to round out in the form, which is a hard thing to do this late in the year. But Jake and I were having a conversation yesterday, and we were talking about threats on Michigan's offense. And I had named 3 things that I think are a bigger threat than Blake Corum getting the football. And one of those things is some of the offensive design that I see from Sharon Moore when it comes to creating favorable matchups in the pass game. He is a guy who will use shifts, formations, he'll use motions, stacks, anything so he can get off of press coverage. He can get a guy like Roman Wilson, who's not a big guy, but a fast guy, running on a deep over, one-on-one with somebody who's in chase mode. It's something that works. And I think with a month to plan, he needs to be in his play calling bag. I think it's unfair to ask those wide receivers to go out there against 3 All-Americans in Alabama's secondary and tell them that they got to win one-on-one based off of skill alone. You're a bad football coach if you do that. What you can do as a football coach is say, you've got some good skill that I can utilize with my design, and we can find ways to scheme you guys open, and that's got to be their game plan. They need to be in that play calling bag when they play Alabama.
Off of that, I don't need them to find success in the light of this is going to be the historic day, the best game of the season for any of them, but I need them to make enough plays when those opportunities present themselves. And JP had a great lead in because a lot of this is going to be on Sharon Moore. If you watched a cut-up of Roman Wilson's catches this year, I would say over half of them were on crossers at some level. Deep, intermediate, and shallow. He's a speedy guy. So off of that is I may get into that early in the game, but then you have to have complementary pieces. How about a deep crosser that turns into a corner? That was one of my favorite routes as a tight end. How about a deep crosser that stops? What can you do to window dress that and have your counter punch to your primary punch? I would also say Colston Loveland is the next one in line.
Bingo.
Those were the November stats for the receivers. JJ, when he got a little bit beat up, was looking for the tight end room. In a game of matchups, I think a tight end is your biggest advantage, particularly if you know and I know, and Alabama knows, Michigan's going to want to run the football. The guys that guard the tight end are linebackers and safeties. Their first priority, the first 2 or 3 steps post-snap, are committed to stopping the run. That's where Colston Loveland has to win and make his money.
Yeah, I think J.J. McCarthy's got to have the game of his life. He's got to keep Michigan out of 3rd and long situations because I don't think you let Dallas Turner and those pass rushers come at you. I think it's going to be a long day. Mm-hmm. We just pointed to the fact that Michigan's receivers probably not going to win many one-on-one matchups, but hearing Joshua discuss with the offensive coordinator what he likes to do, it kind of reminds me of Jimbo Fisher. And before you panic, yes, I think Jimbo Fisher was one of the worst coaches in the SEC, deserved to be fired, probably should have been fired about 2-3 years ago. But the one game he got up for, he always had something in his bag for Alabama, and it was a lot of the motion, a lot of the shift. They did a lot of this stuff only in the Alabama game. They put it in the trash the rest of the season. That's why they were so god-awful and he should be fired. But if they can do some of those same things, it does confuse Nick Saban's very complicated defensive scheme there. So I think those are all keys to Michigan making this competitive ball game.
That was one of the things that you just said there at the end. I think is something that needs to be reiterated about Nick Saban's scheme. It is really good, and he's a guy who thinks from the secondary down, and so he's got all of the answers. But you are forced to communicate constantly within that defense, and when the picture continues to change pre and post snap, that communication becomes much more difficult. So either guys are going to have coverage busts because they can't communicate properly, or you force their hand and they have to simplify the coverages that they're playing, and you can really attack. And that's why I think the design is going to be so important.
Yeah, and look, I think for Michigan's offense, I think it all comes down, as we discussed yesterday, to J.J. McCarthy adding to the rush attack, getting you the numbers advantage. If you can get them in a situation like Ohio State was 2 years ago, where all of a sudden they're over-committing to the box, and then you create some one-on-ones, that's when Roman Wilson comes in to shine. And also, let's be clear about this. Like, I don't feel great about Alabama's offense against this Michigan defense. So eventually we're going to have to flip it over and talk about that as well.
Yep.
Because this Alabama offense, they haven't exactly been world beaters either. Boys, red corner, blue corner. Thank you so much, Joshua. Thank you so much, Jake. Y'all have an excellent day, my friends. We'll see you tomorrow. Signing day tomorrow. Big show coming up tomorrow. Look forward to that. We will see you then. Look at that. Carson Beck's numbers, over 3,700 yards, 22 tuds, 6 picks, and 72% completion. Second in pass efficiency and yardage, only to Jayden Daniels this season. By all accounts, SEC Mike, a very good first-year starting for Carson Beck, but not good enough to bring his talent to the NFL, as it is official. He will be returning to Georgia for the 2024 season for Carson Beck. Is this the correct decision?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is, because I don't think he was going to be among the top, probably even 2 quarterbacks taken in the upcoming draft. We'll see how high Jayden Daniels go, but maybe even behind him. So this is an opportunity to improve his stock. This is an opportunity for him to win a national championship, something that, yeah, he's done as a backup option there in Athens, but not as a starting quarterback. And immediately, I get it. They're not in the playoff right now. Alabama, Texas are. They're going to be in the preseason top 5. But I think this decision makes Georgia preseason number 1, looking ahead to 2024. Hey, give me Carson Beck 10 out of 10 over Dylan Raiola. Who cares about him? We got Carson Beck. That's all we need.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's why, right? That's why Raiola went to Nebraska. He literally means more to them than he ever would to Georgia, and probably the money was better as well. Here's the deal, Beck. It's the right decision for him. Why come out now, be QB4, when you could come out next year and be the number 1 overall pick? Also, with how that Alabama game ended, his stock took a hit. Here he was on a relatively even playing field. Could he carry his team to victory? And not only did he not do that, but he made the big mistake that ends up being the difference in the game. So Beck has a ton to prove. He's the big man on campus. He's being paid well. And as you said, I'm not going to go yeah, maybe they'll be ranked number 1, whatever. I'm not going to call them or Bama the favorite for the SEC. I'm just going to call them 2 sides of the same coin, right? That coin is the favorite to win the SEC and the national championship. On one side, it's Nick Saban, and on the other side, it's Kirby Smart, because, well, some things never change, which is a great song from Frozen, which I love Frozen. Other teams that could potentially be in line for the playoff next year, Mike. So we believe that on any given year, 4 SEC teams should make a 12-team playoff. Bama and Georgia, they get the benefit of the doubt no matter what. Who are those next 2 teams when you look forward to 2024?
Well, I think you have to consider Texas. They may win the national championship here in a couple of weeks, Steve Bob. So if they can finish the deal, and even if they make it to the national championship, and even if they lose that game by a slim margin, I think given what they have targeted to return for another year, you have to put Texas into that conversation. Ole Miss, with all their NIL games, what they got coming back, there's probably a separation there between 3 and 4, but I'm firmly putting Ole Miss in that conversation. Same thing with Mizzou, 10-win season, maybe 11 if they can finish it here with the bowl. And then I think the ultimate wild card, T-Bob, I know you're going to hate this, and it's not just Hobart talk, but I like Tennessee. With Nico coming in as a starting quarterback, won 11 games just 2 years ago. The defense getting better and better under Josh Heupel, and it's looking like 4 seniors, offensive lineman starters, coming back for their super seniors. That's music to Tennessee fans' ears, because with a redshirt freshman quarterback, you're going to need that experience up front.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's Texas for sure. And I was a big Steve Sarkisian doubter before the year. Why? He had never won 10 games. Well, not only has he broken through that glass ceiling, but contextually, it's how he's broken through that's been so impressive. He lost his starting quarterback for multiple games. It didn't matter. Even against some really good teams, including defending Big 12 champion in Kansas State, finding ways to win. Quinn Ewers playing excellent. They have all the monetary investment. They now have the wins to sell as well. I don't care if they win a playoff game or not. I would put Texas in that number. And then I'm applying the pressure to Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. If not now, when? You just win the portal. You got the number 1 corner in the portal. You got the top 2 edge rushers in the portal, Prince Umanmielen and what's his name?
Tyler Barron.
Thank you. And Tyler Barron. Oh, yeah, you would know, Mike. He's coming from Tennessee. You have the number 1 receiver in the portal, and Juice Wells. You team him up with Trey Harris. You got Quinshon Judkins. Like, what did Lane Kiffin tell us earlier this year? oh, yeah, sorry, lost to Georgia. They got better players, dude. They got all the pros. Well, guess what? You got the pros now, okay? So no more excuses, Ole Miss. You've invested. You've done very well. You're on the edge of winning 11 games, first time in school history. You absolutely should make a 12-team playoff next year. And if you don't, your investors and your fans should be upset. Coming up next, let's continue to discuss some of these teams that could potentially challenge Ole Miss for that final spot that's available, including LSU, Mizzou, team we haven't even discussed yet, and some more in Tennessee. Keep it locked right here on Rivals Down South. What's happening, y'all? Welcome back to Rivals Down South, youtube.com/Watch Stadium, where you can always get involved. Fonz really in the chat. Damn, T-Bob's on another show. No wonder he's sucking at chess nowadays. Relax, Fonz, okay? I don't know why it is. I cannot for the life of me figure it out. I have plateaued hard. I need to study more. What I don't need is any negativity in the chat. Now, that said, speaking of improving, one team that has not plateaued, we mentioned Ole Miss. It seems nearly inconceivable to me that I am talking about an Ole Miss team winning 11 games and then being a top 5 team maybe the following year. Even more inconceivable, though, Mike, is this Missouri Tiger football program right now. Again, let's go back a few months, man. They were booing their head coach. They were booing Brady Cook. They were ready to blow it all up. It was a failure until it wasn't. They get hot. They win 10 games. They have monetary investment. They've got statewide bipartisan support. All of a sudden, they're landing big-time recruits. They just stole Oklahoma's best O-lineman out of the transfer portal in Caden Green. Oh, they're losing Trader. Well, guess what? They go and get Marcus Carroll out of Georgia State. You got Cook returning. You got Luther Burden returning. The craziest part about this all, Mike, is that Mizzou's current run feels less like a heater and feels sustainable.
Well, not only that, T-Bob, but speaking of another show, I was just on another show. I got in an argument with a guy there. He just wants to reference blue chip ratio. You got to have a top 5 roster, a top 10 roster. The last 20 years proves that. Well, I throw all that in the garbage, T-Bob, because we're in a new era. We're in a new era with NIL,
true.
with the transfer portal, with the expanded playoff, and these are the teams. We've just mentioned Ole Miss. Now we're talking Missouri. What have they done? They've utilized the portal better than anybody. The state of Missouri has helped Missouri, the University of Missouri, with the NIL laws. Teams are seeing that there is an opportunity here to, I wouldn't say exploit because it's all legal now, but they're utilizing these rules in a manner that I've never imagined, T-Bob. Oklahoma complaining that some shenanigans going on in their mind, and a Missouri native is going to go play at Mizzou. Well, Oklahoma's been doing that to the rest of the country the last 50 years, so we're just turning the shoe on the other foot, so to speak. I think you're 100% right, T-Bob. I think Mizzou, this is not a one-year wonder. They're putting their chips on the table, saying in a 12-team format, we'd be in there. Let's improve this roster. Let's guarantee we're there next year. And that's why I think Mizzou and Ole Miss, they're probably going to be in this conversation all season long in 2024.
It sounds crazy. I'd score them both above LSU. I'd score them both above Tennessee. You know, these much more traditional powers that are in flux a bit right now. Speaking of flux, Mike, if you look it up in the dictionary right now, I'm almost positive you would see Brent Venables' picture next to it or an Oklahoma logo, because I don't know what to make of him, right? I'm uber critical of Venables after year one, where he takes over one of the most legendarily successful programs in college football history in Oklahoma, one of the most consistent programs of the past 20 years, and he goes 6-7. I'm like, oh my God, this guy might be terrible. He's never been a head coach. Well, he recruits well. He hires well in Jeff Lebby, and all of a sudden this year, 10-2, they beat Texas. But then what do they do after they beat Texas? They lose to Kansas. They lose to Oklahoma State in the final bedlam. They don't play for a Big 12 championship. And now in the offseason, their starting quarterback's gone, their OC's gone, they're losing linemen to Mizzou. And once again, Mike, I have to spend an entire offseason asking myself whether or not Brent Venables is a good head coach. What is the truth of this Oklahoma program right now to you?
Yeah, I see a lot of parallels with the Texas program, ironically, just maybe slightly different because obviously Venables a defensive guy, Sark's an offensive guy, but they both realize, hey, we got to get better on the line of scrimmage in order to compete in the SEC when we get there. Texas is clearly ahead of schedule on that front. Yes. They whooped Alabama on the line of scrimmage. That was key to getting that win earlier in the season. But I think Oklahoma is we're going in the wrong direction here. Now, they're loading up and recruiting, so I think in a couple of years they'll be fine in the SEC, but it's going to start in a hurry with 5 new starters up front on the offensive line, with Caden Green off the Mizzou, with a new quarterback, Jackson Arnold. He's got a world of potential, but it's the exact opposite of what I was talking about with Nico. 5 new starters up front, new offensive coordinator. I think they're in for a real struggle. I don't see Oklahoma as a playoff contender next season, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line.
And the expectations ain't going to change. It's going to be to win 10. Now, you see Mean Girls, right, Mike? You know how Gretchen keeps trying to make fetch happen? You keep trying to make Tennessee in 2024 happen. You got 60 seconds. Sell me on why we should think that the Volunteers could make noise.
Well, a big reason, Joe Milton off to wherever he's gone next, because we got Nico, baby. We got a defense. You're right. Tyler Barron off to Ole Miss. That's because we didn't want him. We're so loaded on the defensive front, T-Bob. We didn't even need him. Defense going to continue to get better and better and better. Completely new secondary, all second-year players. There going to be some lockdown there. They're getting guys via the portal as well. Number 1 tight end from Notre Dame. I just think with Josh Heupel, offensive mastermind, we flip it back. We get Florida and Alabama at home next season. Those were the 2 big wins from a season ago. Get Georgia. It's Georgia's 8th consecutive SEC game, 8 out of 8. That's a perfect time to catch Georgia. You're still going to be underdogs, but you're getting them at the right time. Everything's loading up for Tennessee to make a run in 2024.
Yeah, unless Nico sucks. But we'll see. We'll see. we'll see where it ends up going. If only you could watch him during the bowl game, like LSU fans may get a little glimpse of their future. We'll break it all down coming up next here on Rivals Down South. Our guy, Ottawa Traveler, in the chat. Georgia has 4 national championships. It's not guaranteed they win another anytime soon. If I'm a betting man, I would bet that that's not true. Only time will tell. One school that's won 3 national championships in the year 2000, the LSU Tigers. However, going into year 3 of Brian Kelly, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You're losing a Heisman winner in Jayden Daniels. It announced yesterday he will not be playing in the bowl game, but it does then give you a glimpse of the future, right? While Tennessee fans have to watch Joe Milton play one more time, LSU fans will now get to watch the heir apparent Garrett Nussmeier sling the rock in the ReliaQuest Bowl on January 1st. One of the reasons why that's potentially so impactful is, well, obviously he's projected to be the starting quarterback next year. He gets a full 15 practices with which to prepare for the game, and announced by Brian Kelly yesterday, he'll be throwing to not 1, but 2 first-round NFL wide receivers as both Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., Mike, going to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
Yeah, and I think this says a lot about the culture that Brian Kelly's got down there, that these players are suiting up. I think it also speaks to, how well they want Garrett Nussmeier to look and have confidence going into next season. I think let's say he was an unpopular player, I think a lot of these guys would opted out and said, hey, I'm following our leader off to the NFL, but they're not doing that. So again, I think I don't want to say unsettled ground there for LSU. I just don't know quite what to make of them, because as good as Garrett Nussmeier may be, he's not going to be as good as Jayden Daniels, and his defense was a travesty. If we've got to fix a defense, otherwise it's going to be. I don't think LSU is going to come close to another 10-win season.
Considering that the bowl game doesn't kind of matter, I kind of get the feeling that Matt House's job could be on the line. If you let this spoiled milk dairy raid have success on you, that might be the straw that finally breaks the camel's back. Other SEC transfer portal news in the quarterback department, A.J. Swan, former Vandy quarterback committing to LSU, the portal. And I think it's a pretty shrewd move. He's good enough to where it allows Nussmeier to not get complacent, because he can push him. He adds depth and experience to a room that sorely needs it, but he doesn't push Nussmeier out the door. So pretty good roster management here, in my opinion. That'll do it for us today here on Rivals Down South. He is SEC Mike. Check out that SEC podcast. I'm T-Bob Hebert, and we'll see you tomorrow for Sign Day here on Rivals.
Welcome to Inside the Association, presented by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365.
What's good, NBA fans? Welcome into Inside the Association. Happy that you guys are joining us. We have an action-packed 30 minutes for you, so stay locked in with us right here through the entirety of the show. I'm Harrison Sanford. Joining me is Stadium Basketball Insider Shams Charania, as well as Stadium Basketball Analyst Isis Young. And let's get right into it, y'all, into the never ordinary news presented to you by Bet365. Now, if you go into an NBA season, you would never expect a team that finished 51-31 the previous year would currently have a record